Today, I'm going to walk you through how to master strengthened questions in LSAT logical reasoning. The good news is that once you master these, you'll also get better at other types of logical reasoning questions involving gaps like weaken and necessary assumption. Today, I'll cover everything you need to know to ace strengthened questions, including how to identify them, the step-by-step process for solving them, key reasoning structures to watch out for, common trap answers and how to avoid them, and I'll even share some specific examples to reinforce these concepts. First, for those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally increased my own LSAT score from a 152 to a 175. Now, strengthened questions are designed to test your ability to make an argument more robust or strong, and you can spot them based on the phrasing in the question stem. They might, of course, use the word strengthen. They might use the word support or justify or strongest. So, for example, which one of the following, if true, most supports the argument, or which one of the following most justify the conclusion. All of these question stems aim to boost the argument's validity. A key word to look for is most, indicating that your job here is to find the choice that provides the most significant support for the conclusion. Now, let's walk through a step-by-step process for actually solving strengthened questions. First, find the conclusion. The conclusion is the statement the argument is trying to prove. Look for indicator words like therefore, thus, or so. Spotting the conclusion is key because your job with this question type is to make the conclusion more convincing given the evidence. Speaking of which, step 2 is to ID the evidence. These are going to be the facts or premises that LSAC is using to support the conclusion. These are the building blocks of the argument. Now, step 3 is to spot the gap. In any argument on the LSAT, there's going to be some kind of gap between the evidence and the conclusion. You want to ask yourself, why doesn't this evidence fully prove the conclusion? How is it possible for the evidence, as given, of course, to be true, yet for the conclusion to be false? Understanding the gap is critical. It tells you what is missing and what kind of information will actually strengthen the argument. Now, step 4, you want to anticipate or prephrase how to fix the argument. What kind of information would bridge the gap between the evidence and the conclusion? Your prediction or prephrase doesn't have to be perfect, but it'll help you stay focused as you run through the answer choices. And of course, step 5 now is to actually run through or evaluate the answer choices. You want to go through each option systematically, one by one, looking for the choice that most directly addresses the gap and makes the conclusion more likely. You want to knock out answer choices that are irrelevant to the argument, that weaken the argument, or provide too little support to actually make any kind of real difference. Now, there are some common structures you'll see in the reasoning of strengthened question arguments. If you understand the structures of the arguments, you'll be able to navigate the questions much more easily. Let's walk through a couple of common types. One is going to be argument making a comparison between two or more things. For example, if an argument said, hybrid cars are more efficient than traditional cars because they use less fuel, there are, of course, a number of different ways to strengthen an argument like this. You might want to highlight additional advantages of hybrid cars, like they have lower maintenance costs, or you might want to undermine the case for traditional cars, for example, by saying that they contribute more to air pollution. Here's another example. If we had an argument saying, quote, organic farming is more sustainable than conventional farming because it uses fewer synthetic inputs, you could strengthen this argument by saying organic farms produce less runoff, reducing water contamination. Or you might say conventional farming relies heavily on fossil fuels for synthetic fertilizer production. That was comparative arguments. You may also have causal arguments that propose a cause and effect relationship, like a daily meditation practice reduces anxiety. To strengthen a causal argument, you could eliminate alternative causes. For example, your strengthener might propose that participants in the study did not change their diets or exercise routines. Or you might show a direct link between meditation and lower anxiety. For example, if we learned that brain scans reveal lower activity in anxiety-related areas after meditation, that would, of course, strengthen the argument. Here is yet another argument. Quote, spending time in nature improves concentration levels. If we learned, for example, that participants who spent 30 minutes in the park completed tasks 20% faster than those who stayed indoors, that would help the argument. Additionally, if we learn, for example, that nature exposure reduces levels of stress hormones, which are known to impair concentration, that would also strengthen the argument. Now, aside from causal relationships, you might also see conditional logic in strengthened arguments. Now that we've covered causal reasoning arguments, let's move on to arguments involving conditional logic. Conditional logic, of course, involves if-then statements such as, if a student practices consistently, they will improve their test scores. If we want to strengthen a conditional argument, once again, we want to confirm the relationship or dismiss exceptions. For example, if we learned that all students who practiced daily for a month improved their scores, that would, of course, strengthen that conditional claim. Here's another example. Quote, if a company implements a 4-day work week, employee productivity will increase. It would strengthen this argument if we learned that studies show that workers are more focused and efficient during shorter work weeks. Or if we learned, for example, that companies that adopted a 4-day work week saw a 15% rise in productivity compared to those with traditional schedules. Now let's walk through some common trap answers and how to avoid them. First, of course, out of scope. Everyone loves to talk about out of scope, but when I say out of scope, I mean specifically answer choices that introduce totally irrelevant information. For example, if the argument is about electric cars, but the answer discusses nuclear energy, that's totally unrelated. More tempting might be weakened answer choices that actually harm the argument because they are directly opposite of what we're looking for. That can strangely sometimes make them tempting. These traps may be subtle because an answer choice could support a competing conclusion, but not the conclusion that we're actually looking for. You also want to knock out answer choices that support the evidence instead of the conclusion. Answer choices that strengthen the premises may seem relevant, but they're not actually addressing the argument's main gap, and so for that reason, you want to knock them out. Now, I'll share another strengthened example in just a moment, but before I do, I wanted to let you know that if you're struggling with strengthening questions on the LSAT or anything else, my team and I would be glad to help you out. We can craft for you a personalized day-by-day study plan to help you drill, for example, strengthening questions if that's an area where you're struggling, or anything else on logical reasoning or the LSAT as a whole for that matter. We also offer live online classes via Zoom, on-demand video courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching. You can check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. Now, here's yet another example of a strengthening question. If we have an argument saying, for example, quote, switching to LED lighting in office buildings saves money because LEDs are more energy efficient, it would strengthen the argument if we learned, for example, that, quote, LEDs use 75% less energy than traditional bulbs, leading to significant cost savings, or, quote, office buildings that switched to LEDs saw a 30% reduction in electricity bills within a year. So going forward, practice strengthening questions, drill them if you need to, and remember that as you improve in strengthening questions, you'll also improve across the logical reasoning section as a whole, since the vast majority of questions in logical reasoning contain gaps. And so knowing how to strengthen will also, on the flip side, show you how to weaken, show you how to identify any underlying necessary assumptions. And again, of course, if you'd like my help, my team and I would be glad to support you on your journey to scoring a 170 or above. Check out the links below to book a call with me and my team. And in the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.